The colony of Verta 7 was quiet and small. People lived in silver dome houses, worked in solar farms, and sent reports back to Earth once a week. Life was slow, peaceful, until Leo arrived. Leo was just 12, but anyone could tell he was not a normal boy. He was quiet, always alone, and wore strange gloves that covered his fingers completely. His eyes were dark but thoughtful, like he was always solving a puzzle in his head. He spoke softly, and only when someone asked him something. Directly, he had moved in with his grandmother, Nani Mira, who lived near the edge of the colony. She was a kind old woman who baked fresh bread and grew yellow tomatoes in her small garden. She said Leo's parents were gone on a long mission, but didn't say more. The neighbors didn't ask. Leo started going to the local colony school. The next day, that's when the trouble began. The other kids didn't like him. He didn't play games, didn't talk during lunch, and always carried a small notebook filled with strange drawings, circles, lines, stars, and machines. When a boy named Ben asked him what he was drawing, Leo said, "Energy flow map." Ben laughed loudly. "What is this alien language?" Another boy, Tommy, grabbed the notebook and ran around with it. "Look at this. He's planning to build a spaceship." The other kids laughed and started calling him Moon Brain. Leo didn't fight back. He stood still, watching as they crumpled his page and tossed his lunch on the floor. After school, he quietly picked up the pieces and walked home. The next day, it was worse. They threw pebbles near his boots and mocked the way he talked. One girl whispered that he must be a robot. Another said he was cursed. Leo never said a word, but he noticed things others didn't. Single quotes d. He saw how the colony lights flickered exactly every 72 seconds. He noticed a strange pulse in the sky near sunset. And he always listened to sounds that no one else paid attention to. At home, he asked Nani Mira if she had any old junk he could use. She smiled and gave him access to a wooden chest filled with broken wires, metal plates, and old devices that hadn't worked since the last power storm. Leo stayed up late, fixing and building. He made a tiny wind-powered fan that never stopped spinning. He repaired a broken radio that picked up sounds from the hills. He even created a strange circle of copper that glowed blue when he touched it, but no one cared. No one asked. The next week, the teacher gave the class a science project. "Build something small but useful for the colony," she said. "Use your own ideas." Leo smiled for the first time in days. He built a clean water sensor, a tiny device that could test water quality using just sunlight and sand. It looked simple, but it worked perfectly. On presentation day, Ben laughed again. "What is that?" "A toy." The class didn't even wait to see the test results. They gave first prize to a model rocket that didn't even launch properly. Leo walked home, holding his working sensor in silence. That evening, he wandered far past the solar panels and old cargo containers toward the edge of the colony. There, hidden behind tall grass and piles of scrap, stood an old workshop. The sign said, "Repairs and Salvage by Rick." Leo had heard of Rick, a man the colony didn't talk about much. Some said he had gone to war. Others said he used to fight pirates in the asteroid fields. But everyone agreed, Rick was dangerous. They said he had a short temper and a broken past. Still, Leo walked toward the shed. He needed parts. The inside of the shed was dark but full of life. Machines of all sizes, old ship parts, wires, rusted metal arms, and blinking lights filled the space like a maze. Leo quietly stepped inside, his hands in his pockets, eyes scanning for what he needed. He didn't know someone was watching. A deep voice echoed from the back. "What are you looking for, kid?" Leo froze. From the shadows came a tall man with broad shoulders, oil-stained gloves, and a short gray beard. His name was Rick, and he didn't smile. I need a capacitor," Leo said softly. "For a solar circuit." Rick narrowed his eyes. "You trying to steal from me?" Leo shook his head. No, I'll trade. I fixed a wind fan. You can have it. Rick looked at the small device Leo pulled from his backpack. It was well made, quiet, and smooth. Huh, Rick said. You built this? Leo nodded. Rick didn't say anything for a long moment. Then he turned and walked deeper into the shed. Come on, he said. Let's find you a capacitor. Leo followed. That night, he came home late. His hands were dirty, his pockets full of new parts, and for the first time since arriving at the colony, he felt a little less alone. He didn't know it yet, but his life had just changed. And so had Rick's. Every evening after school, Leo quietly walked toward the edge of the colony, past the solar farm, beyond the dirt road, and behind the tall grass stood Rick's workshop, the old shed filled with scrap and forgotten machines. The people in town warned children not to go there. Rick is dangerous, they whispered. He used to fight in wars. Don't look him in the eyes. He's not right in the head. But Leo didn't listen. For the first time since he arrived on Verta 7, someone looked at him without mocking. Rick didn't laugh at his gloves or call him names. Rick didn't ask too many questions. He just saw Leo's hands careful, skilled, and curious. And Rick respected that. Inside the shed, it smelled like metal and burnt wires. The roof leaked in one corner and old batteries buzzed in another. Machines stood half-fixed on tables. Wires hung like vines and tools lay scattered around. Rick sat on a wooden stool, holding a cracked circuit board. He grunted when Leo entered. You're late, he said, though not unkindly. I had to wait until the others left school, Leo replied, wiping dust off his gloves. Rick nodded. He didn't ask more. He had seen the bruises on Leo's backpack, the scratch near his elbow, the quiet way he looked at the floor. He understood more than he let on. For the next few days, the same pattern followed. School during the day, cold stares, whispers, and laughter. Workshop in the evening, tools, machines, and silence. Rick began to teach Leo how to use proper tools. That's a torque driver, not a screwdriver. And always disconnect power first, unless you like sparks. Leo listened carefully. His small fingers were steady, his mind sharp. Together they fixed old radio parts, cleaned solar chips, and even repaired a drone leg. Sometimes they didn't talk for hours. Just the hum of tools and the crackle of the soldering iron filled the space. But in those quiet hours, something strong began to form. Trust. One evening, Rick watched Leo draw strange symbols on a metal plate. What's that supposed to be? Rick asked, wiping his hands with a cloth. Leo hesitated, then spoke softly. It's a pattern. The energy doesn't flow straight. It loops. Rick frowned and looked closer. The boy's drawing was detailed. The lines were smooth, curved, connected. It looked more like art than engineering, but Rick had seen something similar before. A long time ago. He didn't say it out loud, but Rick's heart skipped a beat. You didn't learn this in school, Rick said. Leo shook his head. No one taught me. I just see it. Rick didn't press. But something was definitely unusual. One afternoon, a group of kids followed Leo. They watched him go toward the shed. Why does he always go there? Tommy whispered. Maybe he's making alien weapons, then laughed. Or maybe he's learning from the old crazy man. Another boy added. They decided to spy. Leo was inside the shed, helping Rick fix a backup power converter. When they crept close and peeked through the broken window, they saw Leo using a small glowing tool to trace lines across a metal surface. The lines lit up for a second, blue and bright, then faded. None of them had seen anything like it. What is that? One boy whispered. Just then, the door creaked open. Rick stepped outside. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. The boys froze. Rick stood there, arms crossed, eyes sharp like steel. His voice was calm but firm. You lost? He asked. No, sir, Ben muttered. Then get moving. This isn't your playground. Without waiting, the boys turned and ran. Rick stood there for a while, watching them disappear behind the solar field. Then he walked back inside. Leo looked up, confused. Who was it? Just some birds, Rick lied. But Leo knew better. That night, Rick sat alone after Leo left. He stared at the metal plate the boy had drawn on earlier. The pattern. It wasn't random. He walked to a locked drawer and pulled out an old datapad. Dusty and scratched, it hadn't been used in years. He tapped it a few times. After a few failed tries, it turned on. The screen flickered, showing maps, logs, old files from his days in the outer systems. He opened one folder marked Xenotech, Restricted. Inside were images, diagrams, notes from his time as a soldier engineer. During the frontier conflict, he had been part of a unit that recovered alien devices, machines that no one fully understood. On one file, he found it, the same pattern Leo had drawn. Rick sat back, staring at the screen. His heart beat faster. How does a kid like him know this? He whispered. He looked at the shed door, where Leo had just walked out a few minutes ago. Then at the glowing tool Leo had forgotten on the table. This wasn't just some quiet boy with strange habits. This boy knew something the world had buried. The next day, Rick acted normal. He didn't mention the drawing. He didn't mention the boys spying or the alien files. He just handed Leo a screwdriver and asked him to help with the broken drone arm. But inside, Rick had made a decision. He would protect this boy. Whatever Leo was, wherever he came from, and no matter what secrets he carried, Rick would not let the world hurt him, not again. The bond between Leo and Rick grew stronger with each passing day. In the dusty shed filled with wires, broken screens, and forgotten machines, the two worked like a quiet team. Rick had never taken a student before. Leo had never trusted anyone before. Yet here they were, two lonely souls building something like family. Leo started arriving earlier than usual, even before Rick opened the door. He waited outside with his backpack, carrying his notebook and a small box of spare parts. He was always excited to learn something new: soldering, programming, building circuits. Rick taught patiently, using simple words and clear steps. He didn't smile much, but Leo could tell when Rick was proud. One evening, Leo fixed a broken hover skate using nothing but scrap and a coil from an old lamp. Rick tested it, then gave a small nod. "Good work," he said. Leo smiled all the way. Home. At school, however, nothing changed. The other kids still mocked Leo. They whispered and laughed when he passed. They didn't understand him, and they didn't want to. His notebook became the target again. Ben grabbed it during lunch and waved it around. "Still drawing alien stuff, Moonbrain?" Ben shouted. Leo stood still. He wanted to shout, but he stayed quiet. His hands clenched, but he said nothing. Then Tommy pushed him lightly from behind. "You always run to your junkyard, Dad? He teaching you how to be weird?" Leo turned around, holding back tears. "He's not weird. He's better than all of you." Ben and the others laughed even harder. That same evening, Leo returned to the shed, quieter than usual. He sat near the back table and stared at a half-finished machine. Rick noticed his silence. "They said something again, didn't they?" Leo nodded without looking up. "They said you're weird. They said I'm just like you." Rick leaned back on his stool and let out a soft breath. "Well," he said, "they're right. I am weird, you are too." Leo looked up, confused. "And that's why we build things no one else understands. That's why we see patterns where they see junk," Rick continued. "You don't have to be like them. Just be better." Leo's eyes lit up, even if just a little. Rick handed him a small metal cube. "Let's build something new," he said. The next day, Rick showed Leo how to read energy levels using a sensor grid. It was a complicated task, even for adults. But Leo learned it fast too fast. He adjusted the wires and changed the pulse settings without needing help. Then he added a new feature, a feedback loop that detected air pressure changes. Rick stared at the machine, impressed. "Where did you learn that?" he asked. Leo looked at his hands. "I don't know. It just makes sense in my head." Rick said nothing, but inside, he was sure now. Leo's brain worked differently. Not in a broken way, in a brilliant way. He wasn't just smart. He saw technology like it was part of him. That night, Rick pulled out the alien blueprint from his old files. It matched Leo's designs almost perfectly. This wasn't luck. This was something deeper. Meanwhile, the colony council had started. Noticing the boys' daily visits to Rick's shed, one evening, Councilman Darren visited Rick. "You've got the boy coming here every day," Darren said. "Some parents are worried." Rick didn't look up from his workbench. "Worried? About what?" "He's fixing broken colony equipment better than your own engineers." Darren frowned. "He's just a child. Maybe it's too much. And you're not exactly a teacher." Rick finally looked up, sharp and calm. "That boy is safer in this shed than he is in your schoolyard." Darren opened his mouth to argue but then closed it. He knew about the bullying, but it was easier to ignore. Rick added, "If you want to help him, fix your school first." Darren left, silent. A few days later, the bullies followed Leo again. This time, they came all the way to the edge of the junkyard. They stood behind the fence and shouted, "Hey, Moonbrain, you hiding with your robot grandpa?" Rick heard the voices. He stepped outside the shed, holding a wrench in one hand. The boys paused. Rick didn't say a word. He just stared at them, calm, still, and strong. His face was quiet, but his eyes were sharp. Ben swallowed hard. "We were just looking for something." "You found trouble," Rick said. They turned and ran. Leo came out a minute later. "I didn't know they followed me." Rick handed him the wrench. "Next time, tell me sooner." Leo smiled. "You scared them." Rick grinned faintly. "Good." That night, Leo showed Rick a new device he had built at home using old kitchen parts. It was a motion tracker, but it worked on vibration, not sound or light. Rick turned it over in his hand. "You built this alone?" Leo nodded. "It can detect footsteps, even from far away." Rick was quiet. "You're building things no one's seen before, Leo." Leo looked nervous. "Is that bad?" Rick shook his head. "It's rare. It means you're special. But people don't always like what they don't understand." Leo looked down. "Then they'll never like me." Rick leaned forward. "They don't have to. You don't need their approval. You just need your purpose." Leo looked up. "And what is it?" Rick pointed to the stars. "Something out there is calling you, and whatever it is, I'll help you reach it." In the dim light of the workshop, surrounded by scrap and dreams, a boy and an ex-soldier sat side by side. One had been called broken. The other had been called strange. But together, they were building something the world wasn't ready for. And soon, that world would have no choice but to notice. It was a cold, quiet evening on Verta 7. The wind moved slowly across the fields, and the solar panels clicked softly as they turned toward the fading sun. But in the woods behind Rick's shed, something new was being built, something secret. Leo had asked Rick for a special place. "I need to build something, big, and no one can see it yet." Rick trusted Leo. He didn't ask too many questions. He helped gather parts from old drones, satellite dishes, and broken colony towers. For weeks, they worked late into the evening in silence. No one else knew what they were building. At first, it looked like a strange metal tree. Then it grew, taller, like an antenna made of curved copper and glowing wires. At the top, Leo placed a glass orb filled with moving blue light. Rick watched Leo work with quiet amazement. The boy moved with focus, his hands quick, his eyes locked on every wire. He didn't even use blueprints anymore. The design was in his head. "Leo," Rick finally asked, "what is this thing?" Leo looked up from the base of the machine. "It's a signal beam. It talks to the stars." Rick raised an eyebrow. "And what are you saying?" Leo paused. "I don't know yet. But I feel like someone is listening." That night, Leo stayed behind after Rick went home. He stood in front of the machine, checked all the parts one last time, then placed both gloved hands on the controls. He took a deep breath and whispered, "I'm ready." The orb lit up with a low hum. Blue light ran through the copper lines. The trees nearby shook lightly as the machine came alive. Then a silent pulse shot upward into the sky. It wasn't loud. There was no explosion or bright flash. But far above, in orbit, sensors blinked. A message had been sent. Leo's machine went quiet again. But something had changed that far beyond the colony. Something had noticed. The next morning, Rick returned to find Leo sitting beside the machine. "You stayed all night?" Rick asked. Leo nodded. "It worked." Rick looked up. The sky was the same. Blue with thin clouds. No sound, no lights. "What happened?" "I sent the signal. And now I think something is coming." Rick didn't like the sound of that. He looked around, half expecting to see drones or security officers. "You think you contacted someone?" Leo nodded again. "Not just anyone. Someone ... like me." Rick sat down on an old crate, his face serious. "You better explain." Leo looked at the grass, then at Rick. "My father was a scientist," he said slowly. "He worked on something secret. It was called Project Echo." Rick leaned forward. He had heard that name before, long ago during the war. A secret mission that no one wanted to talk about. Leo continued. "Project Echo was trying to understand alien signals, messages hidden in energy waves. My father told me I was part of that experiment, not just to study the signals, but to feel them." Rick blinked. "Feel them?" Leo touched his gloves. "My hands. They react to energy. I can feel signals even before machines can. Sometimes I dream about lights and voices I've never heard. Sometimes I draw things that don't exist yet." Rick looked at the boy's calm face. It wasn't just science anymore. This was something deeper, something powerful. "Why didn't you tell me before?" Rick asked. Leo smiled softly. "I wasn't sure you'd believe me." Rick chuckled. "After all the things I've seen in war? Kid, I believe you." That afternoon, strange clouds began forming in the sky. They weren't storm clouds. They moved in perfect shapes, circles and lines like patterns. The colony weather system couldn't explain it. People started asking questions. The council called it a natural event. But Rick knew better. Leo stood outside the shed, staring at the sky. "They're coming," he whispered. Rick put a hand on his shoulder. "Then we'll be ready." That night, Leo made upgrades to the machine. He added a second pulse system and increased the range. Rick helped, but his hands shook a little. He'd been in battles, seen alien ships, even touched unknown tech, but this was different. This time, the call came from a boy, and the reply was near. The next morning, as the colony started its day, everything stopped. A light appeared in the sky, round, glowing, and silent. Not like a ship, not like a satellite. It hovered above the fields, far from the main buildings. The people panicked. Children cried. Adults grabbed radios. The council ordered everyone to stay inside. But Leo and Rick walked toward it. Rick carried a toolkit. Leo carried his notebook. And the strange glowing device he had kept since his arrival, something his father left behind. When they reached the field, the light slowly descended. A hum filled the air, gentle and calm. From the center of the light, a figure appeared. Tall, smooth, not human but not threatening. It was made of silver and blue, with lines like circuits running across its skin. Its face was blank but soft. Leo. Step forward. Rick reached out to stop him. Careful. Leo shook his head. It's okay. The figure raised a hand. Leo raised his in return. Then, without words, something passed between them. A wave of understanding. A feeling like music in the air. The being spoke, not with a mouth, but in Leo's mind. You are the child of echoes. Leo nodded slowly. You heard me. We have always heard you. And now we are here. Rick stood frozen, watching it all. The sky was no longer empty. Back at the colony, the council watched from cameras. Fear filled their hearts. They sent drones, but the drones shut down mid-air. The alien was peaceful, but powerful. They didn't know who Leo really was, but now they would have to learn. Rick and Leo walked back slowly from the field. The light disappeared behind them. The figure was gone, but the signal had been answered, and everything was about to change. The colony of Verta 7 was no longer quiet. For the first time in years, something truly unknown had arrived, a glowing being from the stars, floating gently in the sky, then vanishing like a whisper. The next morning, no one spoke about farming, machines, or market trade. People talked only about the visitor. Councilman Darren called an emergency meeting. Drones were sent to the field where the being had appeared. The readings confused everyone. Strong energy waves, strange magnetic signals, and patterns no machine could explain. No trace of the being was left, except in the hearts of those who saw it, and in the heart of Leo, who had spoken to it without words. Rick and Leo sat together in the workshop. The metal roof above them creaked in the wind. The smell of oil and metal filled the air, as always, but the feeling inside was different now. They're really here, Rick said slowly. Leo nodded. I think that was just the first one. Rick leaned back in his chair, rubbing his chin. And you're sure they're peaceful? Leo didn't answer right away. He looked at his notebook, full of symbols, drawings, and messages from dreams. They don't want war. They want ... connection, he said. But people might not understand that. Rick stood up and walked to the door. He looked out at the clear sky. They already don't. Later that day, Rick got a visit from 2 colony security officers. We need to speak with the boy, one said. The council wants answers. Rick stood in the doorway, arms crossed. He's not going anywhere, Rick replied. He's just a child. He could be in danger. He's in more danger with you than with me. The officers hesitated. Everyone knew Rick's past. They didn't want trouble. This is bigger than both of you, one of them said quietly. Rick didn't move. Then, maybe it's time you started thinking bigger. They left without another word. Leo watched from behind the window. They want to take me. Rick turned to him. They're afraid. They don't understand what's happening. Leo looked down. Maybe I should go. Maybe I can explain everything. Rick shook his head. You owe them nothing. They mocked you, bullied you. Now they're scared because you're special. Leo didn't argue, but his eyes were filled with worry. They won't stop, Rick. What if the next visitor doesn't just appear quietly? What if it comes loud? Rick placed a hand on his shoulder. Then we face it, together. 2 nights later, the sky changed again. This time, there was no quiet descent. A massive ship appeared above the clouds, not glowing, not loud, but present. It didn't land. It hovered, watching. Lights blinked across its surface like stars. On metal skin, the colony was thrown into chaos. Sirens echoed. People ran into shelters. Parents held their children close. The council ordered lockdown across every zone, and above it all, the ship waited. Rick and Leo stood outside the shed, staring at the ship in silence. It's here for me, Leo said. Rick nodded. Then let's meet it. As they moved toward the edge of the colony, security drones hovered around them. A voice echoed from a loudspeaker. Stop, return to your quarters. This is a restricted zone, Rick raised his hand. He's not a threat. He needs to speak with them. The drones aimed red lights at them. Step back. This is your final warning. Before Rick could reply, Leo took a slow step forward. The moment his foot touched the grass, the ship in the sky responded. A beam of soft blue light descended wide and calm, like sunlight. It wrapped around Leo, glowing gently. The drones froze. Their systems glitched. The red lights turned off. The voice in the loudspeaker fell silent. Everyone watching from the windows saw the same thing. The strange boy wasn't being taken. He was being welcomed. From inside the blue beam, Leo heard a voice clear and warm. We heard your call, and we have come. Leo answered with his thoughts. Are you here to help Earth? We are here to guide the echo. That echo is you. Leo blinked. Why me? Because you are the bridge. You understand both machines and hearts. You carry the code of connection. Leo didn't understand everything, but he knew the meaning. He wasn't just strange, he was chosen. Then, a second voice spoke from the ground. Step away from the child. Councilman Darren had arrived, surrounded by guards. He pointed toward Leo and shouted, This is unauthorized. Contact. We must contain the situation. Rick stepped between the guards and Leo. You'll have to go through me. Darren's face twisted in frustration. You're protecting him like he's your son. Rick's voice was calm but strong. He is. The guards hesitated. In that moment, the blue beam pulsed again, brighter now. The ship above opened a round panel, revealing a symbol, the same one from Leo's notebook. Everyone saw it. No one could ignore it anymore. The light faded slowly. The ship, still silent, began to rise higher into the sky. Leo stepped back beside Rick. The connection had been made. The first message had been heard. And the visitors, whoever they were, had no interest in war. They came for peace. For understanding. For Leo. Back in the council room, there was shouting and fear. But in the heart of the colony, something else was growing. People started whispering. New words: hope, change, protection. Children who once laughed at Leo now stared at him with wide eyes. Some were scared. Some were curious. But none could call him Moonbrain anymore. That night, Rick and Leo sat near the edge of the junkyard. They didn't work. They didn't build. They just looked at the stars. They're watching, Leo said. Rick smiled. Let them watch. Leo looked at his notebook. He began drawing a new design: half machine, half star map. What's that? Rick asked. Leo smiled. It's how we help Earth listen back. For many days, the colony of Verta 7 remained silent and tense. Everyone had seen the great ship in the sky. Everyone had seen the blue beam that wrapped around Leo. And everyone had seen Rick standing like a shield between the boy and the colony. Guards. People no longer called Leo names. No one laughed when he walked by. Instead, they stepped aside. They whispered, who is he really? Why did the ship come for him? Is he even human? But no one had answers. Except Leo himself. Back at the shed, Rick watched Leo draw strange patterns on the wall with chalk. His hands moved fast. The shapes were not random. Circles, arcs, dots. They looked like maps. Star maps. Rick leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. You haven't said much since that night, he said. Leo stopped drawing, but didn't turn. I think I finally understand. Understand what? Leo took a deep breath. Why I'm different. Why I dream of machines. Why I hear things before they happen. Why I feel pulled toward the sky. He turned to face Rick, his voice calm, but firm. I'm not just a boy who sees patterns. I'm part of something bigger. Something my father started. Something that's still alive inside me. Rick stepped closer. You said your father was in a secret project, Project Echo. Leo nodded. He was part of a group that studied alien signals, waves from space that carried messages. Not voices, but energy codes. Most people couldn't understand them. But you could, Rick said. Leo looked down at his gloved hands. I could feel them, even as a baby. My father said I was born to listen. Rick sat down beside him. That's why the aliens called you the child of echoes. Leo smiled sadly. Yes, and I think I'm not the only one. There may be others. Out there on other colonies, other worlds who are like me. But I'm the first one they reached. Just then, a soft knock came from the shed door. It was Nanny Mira, Leo's grandmother. She carried a small box in her hands. I think it's time you open this, she said to Leo. He took the box carefully and placed it on the table. Inside was a silver cube, about the size of a book, smooth and cold. It had no buttons, no lights. What is it? Leo asked. Nani Mira's eyes were moist. Your father gave it to me before he disappeared. He told me to give it to you when the sky called your name. Leo touched the cube. The room went quiet. Then, suddenly, the cube lit up with soft blue light and floated an inch above the table. A hologram appeared, a tall man with dark eyes and kind features. Leo gasped. That's my father. The hologram began to speak. If you're seeing this, Leo, then the signal reached them. That means you've begun the journey I could never finish. You were born not just from love, but from science, hope, and a message left long ago in the stars. Your mind is connected to the Echo Net, a hidden path used by peaceful alien minds to speak across space. You are human, but you are also more. You are the first bridge between Earth and the resonant ones. They do not speak with mouths. They speak with feeling, with light, with thought. You were born to hear them. You were born to answer. Never let fear change who you are. And if you ever feel alone, remember, I believed in you. I always will. The hologram faded. The cube returned to silence. Leo stood still, his eyes filled with quiet emotion. For the first time, he felt the pieces fit, his gloves, his dreams, his machines, his drawings, the signals. The voice in the light. It was all real. Rick placed a hand on his shoulder. Your father was a good man. Nanny Mira wiped a tear from her cheek. And you are a good boy. The colony may not see it yet, but I do. Leo turned to them both. I'm ready now. Later that evening, the council called for a meeting. Everyone gathered in the hall, families, workers, officers, and council members. The air was heavy with confusion and fear. Councilman Darren stood at the front. We must discuss the boy. We saw what happened. The alien ship responded to him. The machines are changing. We cannot ignore this. A murmur ran through the crowd. Then, a small voice spoke. I'll answer your questions. Heads turned. It was Leo, standing at the back, next to Rick. He walked forward, calmly and bravely. I didn't mean to scare anyone. I didn't plan any of this. I just listened. Darren frowned. Listen to what? Leo looked up. To them. To the resonance. The what? Leo pointed to the sky. The ones who sent the messages. The ones who visited. They aren't here to fight. They're here to connect. The hall fell silent. Someone from the crowd asked, But why you? Leo looked around. He saw faces that once laughed at him. Faces that doubted him. But he also saw Rick's steady gaze and Nanny Mira's warm smile. Because I'm like a door, Leo said, and they've been knocking for a long time. After the meeting, no one knew what to say. Some people were afraid. Some were amazed. Some stayed quiet. But one thing was clear: Leo was not just a strange boy anymore. He was a link between Earth and the stars, and people had seen it with their own eyes. That night, Rick and Leo stood outside the workshop once more. The stars were bright, the sky clear. You did well, Rick said. Leo smiled. I think it's just the beginning. Rick looked up at the stars. And what do they want next? Leo opened his notebook and held it toward the sky. They want us to answer back. The night was clear and cold over Verta 7. The colony was quiet, but above, the stars shone brighter than ever. Leo stood outside Rick's shed, holding his notebook filled with new designs, symbols, and star maps. The strange journey he had started months ago was reaching its next step. Rick stood beside him, strong and steady as always. The man who once fought battles in the dark corners of space was now a protector for a boy who spoke to the stars. The colony had changed. No longer was Leo ignored or bullied. People looked at him with respect, even hope. Some children tried to talk to him, asking questions about the glowing ship and the visitors. Leo answered them simply, never boasting, only sharing what he knew. Leo also knew this was only the beginning. He had learned from his father's message, from the resonant ones in the light. They wanted to teach, to share, to connect. But first, Leo had to build a way for Earth to listen and speak back. Ready? Rick asked, his voice calm but full of strength. Leo nodded. Together, they walked to the edge of the colony, carrying the new device Leo had built, a signal transceiver. A machine that could send and receive messages faster and clearer than anything Verta 7 had seen before. The device looked strange, with spinning parts and glowing tubes, but inside it held the hope of connection between worlds. As they set the machine on the ground, Leo began to adjust the controls. The copper wires hummed softly. Lights blinked along the sides. Rick watched carefully, his hands steady in case anything went wrong. Then Leo pressed a button. The machine came alive with a soft blue pulse. A gentle beam shot up toward the stars, stronger and clearer than before. A moment, nothing happened. Then the stars seemed to shimmer, and the sky filled with soft, glowing shapes, messages from the resonant ones. Leo smiled. They heard us. Rick nodded, proud. But then Leo's face grew serious. They want us to prepare. They said more will come. Not all will be friendly. Rick's eyes narrowed. We'll be ready. Days passed and the colony watched the skies with new eyes. More ships appeared, smaller, faster, and quieter. Some were friendly and curious, sending light patterns. Others stayed hidden, watching from afar. The council grew nervous. But Rick stood firm. We cannot fight what we do not understand, he sighed. Leo is our key, our hope. Leo spent every day working with Rick, building better machines, learning faster ways to communicate. He taught the children how to listen to signals in the wind, how to watch for patterns in the stars. The bullies were gone. In their place were friends. One evening, as the twin moons rose, a loud sound echoed across the fields. A new ship descended, large and silver, its shape unlike anything on Verta 7. The colony held its breath. From the ship came a group of visitors, tall, gentle beings of light and metal. They smiled with their eyes and spoke with thoughts. Leo stepped forward. We come in peace, he said. The visitors nodded. We are the resonance, one said in a voice like music. You are our bridge, Leo. Rick watched quietly as the two worlds met. He saw the boy who once was alone, mocked, and afraid now stand proud and strong. A protector no longer needed only protection. Later, as the visitors shared knowledge of technology, peace, and stars, the colony began to change. The people learned to work together, to look up, to dream bigger. Leo and Rick became legends, not just for their bravery, but for their hope. Stars, Leo looked at Rick. Do you think we're ready? Rick smiled. With you leading, I know we are. They looked up at the endless sky. And for the first time, the future felt full of promise.